Okay. So the deck
So,
lists become opened up for the top 8. They're not, open during the Swiss. You can't just say like, "Hey, opponent, what are you playing before the match?"
yeah.
But top 8, you can do that. So the players are waiting to see each other's deck lists right now before they start playing.
And
Cannon.
yeah, this is a big deal in the match that we're
Mhm,
gonna be watching as well, because we're gonna be watching Izzet Prowess versus Winota in Pioneer, and this allows the Izzet Prowess deck, I think, a little extra points, because here you can aggressively mulligan 7 card hands that are playable, where you have a 7 card hand where it's just like, a 1 drop, a 2 drop, maybe like another 1 drop, a bunch of creatures. But in this matchup, that's not good enough, right? Might be a hand that you keep blind, but if your hand can't interact with any creatures on the other side, this is a hand that you're going to aggressively mulligan down to 6. And we saw earlier from some of the blue red decks, I assume this one has it well. Cards like Reckless Rage are going to go a very long way in this
mhm,
matchup. Being able to kill Winota the turn it comes into play before
mhm.
it triggers is a very big deal.
Yeah, no, that's like, that could be easily game deciding
Mhm.
on how that plays out. I mean, Winota, we didn't get to see the true power of it, um, as it wasn't drawn in that last match, at least in the final game. But yeah, can completely upend the layout of the board in just one swing. I don't in my experience, playing open deck list or closed, I mean, certainly, yeah, you have much more informed decision making, with open. However, that benefit should apply to both players. You have any opinion yourself? Like, if you're playing a match that matters to you, we'll just say, to make it as generic as possible, would you prefer open deck lists or closed?
I prefer open. I actually
Okay.
like it quite a bit in competitive Magic, especially with how much scouting goes around and people can see stuff. Uh, Allow me to be vain for half a second. I come from someone who's I almost always played the same deck in Legacy, right? So you know what I'm playing anyway. So I prefer open deck lists because it levels the field a little bit more for
Mhm.
myself. And then at bigger events, I generally got put on camera quite a bit, or I would get a feature match as people would come over. So I did feel at a disadvantage sometimes. I have had matches where like my opponent mulliganed, and they're like, "Yeah, this hand's not good enough against you," and I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, because you know what deck I'm playing, and I have no idea what you're playing." Um, I prefer it a little bit. What about yourself? I am, like, it's like 55-45.
I think I also prefer open. I'm tempted to say closed because it is just, I know, preserve kind of what I think of as that
Yeah.
ideal
Yeah.
form. But but I do think, there are solid points for open, because you remove, because you're right, because of scouting there can be a disadvantage on one player, and it does alleviate that. My favorite, I've told this story before. My favorite, incident regarding this actually involved Eric Hawkins, completely by accident. I'm sitting down to play a top 8 of a PTQ, which was where there was flights.
Mhm.
So no one in the top 8 sat near each other during the Swiss, because it was spread out across the room and across time. So I'm sitting down to play top 8, and I had a very impressive game where I think I won turn 4 of both games, and yet I wasn't playing a particularly aggressive deck, just at one point in the Swiss. So Eric Hawkins randomly walks by while me and my opponent are shuffling for top 8, and Eric Hawkins is like, "Oh, how'd it go? I saw you do that double turn 4 win." And I was like, "Oh, yeah, it went pretty well. Obviously, we're in top 8." He's like, "Okay, cool." And then he just wanders off. And my opponent then starts muttering him to himself about, "Well, what deck can have double
Yeah.
and win on turn 4?" And he draws up his opening hand. He's like, "Oh no, need early removal." Mulligans, and then gets blown out because well, not blown out, but effectively sets himself back by throwing away a completely playable hand because of complete
Mhm.
disinformation that Eric Hawkins randomly accidentally gave him. And with open deck
Yeah.
lists, that wouldn't have happened.
I've had some fun ones. I remember I was playing in a modern open once, like somewhere, I think
Mhm.
like Tennessee or something, right? And my opponent like does the thing. He like opens his opening hand. He's like, "Oh, this one's not good enough against you, mulligans." And I'm just like, I kind of roll my eyes a little bit or whatever.
Yeah.
And I go to play, and I think I'm on the play if I remember right. So my turn one, I just go like land vial. I'm playing humans in modern back when humans was like very very good, right? It was like still relatively new. I just go land vial, and my opponent like pauses and just looks at my vial and looks at me and like looks at my vial. And so we play the game out. I beat him, and then like I end up winning the round. And I was just like, "Hey, what was up with that?" And he goes, "Well, when I saw that I was paired against you, I asked my team, like, I was like, 'Hey, what's Tannen playing?'" And they were like, "Oh, he's playing blue white control." And so he mulliganed a hand that was good against would have been good against
Yeah,
creatures,
yeah,
and instead found a hand that had like counterspell in it and stuff.
right.
And I'm just sitting there with a vial in play. My opponent's like, well, now I just mulliganed like 4, technically. So
Yeah,
there's
that
that
is
one.
fantastic. Yeah.
And then I'm in a top 8 of an open once, and my opponent, it's a team event too. So my opponent plays Brainstorm, picks up their cards and like has their hand and the 3 cards and like they're showing their teammate. So I look over to my teammate. I'm like, hey, what's going on over here? Like, how's your match? Like asking because they're whatever. And they're talking about it and they eventually figure out, and he's like, yeah, these 2. And he's like, okay. I'm like, why do you say, these 2? I guess those are gonna go back. And I look, and as I'm looking, the guy goes, I'll shuffle. And I see him shuffling his deck. I'm like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm shuffling the cards back in my deck. I'm like, this is a brainstorm, not a ponder.
Right.
And he's like, oh no. And he's like, I just lost the match. So there's actually no correct fix for this. Sorry, I just had some music start playing randomly on my other screen. There's no correct fix for this in the book. So the judge had to come over and talk to us about what the fix is. And he was like, if you don't agree with this, we can try to, figure something else out. But they want the card to try to do as much as possible. And they don't want him to just get screwed, where he has to put 2 cards back now or whatever. So they allowed me to pick up my opponent's deck, give him 3 cards, and he would resolve Brainstorm after this. It looks like we're getting into the match, but with the open deck list, I figured out what his hand was. So I was
Oh,
able to
that's
give him,
ridiculous.
So I gave him some
I've
cards.
never heard that one, and
Yeah. That one was wild because I asked him,
that
I was
is
like, how
insane.
much
All
time do
right.
I have?
So thanks for sticking with us through that wait. We are now looks like we're ready to go with our top 8 match. 2 seed versus 7, Tom Tracey, Skyler Warfield, Shea Strausman versus Vincent Daniels, Marty Silverberg, and Rajarshi Kolaventy.
You know what the best part about that was though, Joe?
Sure, tell me.
I got killed after that. I died very
Well,
quickly after
it was
that.
it was elimination rounds of an event, and we
Yeah,
know
of
that.
course, of course. I will try to remain as impartial as possible, and I've got multiple friends in this match, so I will try not to root on for them a little too much. So
All right. All right. Well, so we've got the 8 cast mirror on the bottom, even though they're not true 8 cast. One of them at least has 3 thought cast and 3 thought monitors, so 6 cast more like. But anyway, the Kappa Cannoneer mirror.
mhm.
We got 4 color elementals versus Izzet Murktide. We're going to start with Winota versus Izzet Prowess. Winota on a mulligan. And this is a deck that I would imagine, I mean, they're looking for a couple lands, early creature, and a Winota. So putting that card back, like generally, if you have the ideal setup into Winota, you're probably not using all your cards by turn 4. So
Right.
you can get away with 6 cards here probably without too much difficulty.
It may look like a creature deck, but in a lot of essences, it's a combo deck kind of thing. It
Mhm.
plays out like that. Like you're looking for a specific payoff with some of the stuff. It just has other ways of winning. So yeah, like you said, putting card back, not the end of the world here. Plus, some of your stuff just has a lot of value in it, right? Like a lot of these creatures have intrinsic value, or something like Ezekiel's Chariot catches you back up, right? Like,
Mhm.
yeah, you lost a card, but this card is so good and doing so much that helps out a lot. Now, here's the first test for Vincent Daniels. Does he have an answer to this early Landwehr elf,
This
or does he even want to
beautiful,
take his turn?
correct artwork, white bordered elf.
It does look like he
Tom
does,
Tracey,
and
I
he
love you.
doesn't.
Your elf lived because you played the right one.
There you go. That's the important part. A
Oh,
important creature in this matchup is one that's going to actually come down here. Voice of Research is pretty important. So Vincent can't, just wait till Tom's
mhm.
turn to do all of his. Well, it looks like he might be thinking about playing a 3-drop here. I mean, I'm sorry, the innkeeper here. He gets lets him put in an extra creature here. Yeah, he's gonna just, hey, I don't even need the token. We're gonna go ahead and use it. And these are the draws that are really scary out of Winota because there's already 3 creatures in play
Yeah.
plus 3 mana. So if there's land Winota here, you've got to be very, very scared for Vincent Daniels. Now he does have the Reckless Rage in hand, so you may see him leave up a red here this turn, just giving a lot of respect to the Winota, but the Voice of Return just really punishes you for that. I think that's why you kind of see him making like a, well, this sucks kind of movement.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is kind of, aggravating. I mean, even if the one node doesn't show up, if you hold up mana and then have to play removal on your opponent's turn, you can just lose to the Voice of Resurgence tokens easily.
Yeah, and it looks like he's just going to go ahead and hope it's
Wow.
not there. There's only 2 cards left. Don't really blame him. Like you need to
Yeah.
get something going, right? Like you got to get this dragon in play.
Well, I recognize that card that just
Uh,
came off the top,
yeah, I think
and
that's for
it's
Winota,
listed on the archetype as the name of the deck, but I
but
guess no mana source.
yeah, no 4th mana.
Wow.
And with this play and a Soul Scar and a Sprite Dragon in play, if there's any burn spells in Vincent's hand, I think this Landwehr Elf is going to bite the dust here very soon.
Mhm.
There's a
Yeah,
Ledger
I mean,
Shredder getting added here too. But yeah,
that's,
this Landwehr Elf
missing the
just
3rd
became
land drop is just
a huge target, like an
yeah.
absolutely huge target. And I think that's what's going to happen here is going to be like possibly Sprite Dragon, and then yep, it's going to be a Reckless Rage with the 2 damage going to the Soul Scar Mage.
Yep.
Yep. It's going to put 2 counters on these, or a counter each on these. Is a better way to say that. And yep. And this is the kind of game that Vincent is going to really enjoy because yeah, he was on the draw and there was a Landwehr Elf, but the 4th mana being missing gives him a chance he's going to be able to play at that tempo-oriented pace for the rest of the game.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's hard to catch up, and you don't wanna give him the chance to catch up. For Vincent Daniel's side, there's another elf. Okay, I mean, it's almost never too late for Winota to catch Tom Tracey up.
Right. No, that's a really, really good point. That card is that powerful. Now, I don't think he has another red spell here, and I actually like not playing the Ledger Shredder here because what he's going to do is he's using Consider to try to find something to deal with that Landwehr Elf. I think he understands this how important it is to
Mhm.
find something to kill this Landwehr Elf, and this allows him to possibly go into another cantrip to dig deeper. If he played the Ledger Shredder, he wouldn't have been able to do that. And this is what's going to happen. He's going to go ahead and find Expressive Iteration. Now, if he finds like Land Shock or whatever here, he's going to be able to do both of those this turn. So I really like the way that Vincent played this turn, giving himself the most possible options
Mhm.
going into this turn.
Doesn't look like he's gonna get rewarded, at least as far as killing the elf goes, but certainly a lot of damage incoming, but not lethal, so I guess it almost doesn't matter.
Yep.
I mean,
And
if
this
6 or
is
10 damage is coming across, either way, it's another turn.
Yeah, this is an absurd amount of damage, and this is one of the ones where if a Winota happens and he doesn't die, which I wouldn't attack with a Soul Scar Mage either. If Winota happens and he doesn't die here, then he's going to have lethal on the way back.
Now, okay, since the voices
Yep.
were tapped, right? Okay, so the game ends. But if Soulscar Mage attacks there, the Pioneer probably has to block it because it's going to be lethal damage. So that's one less attacker for Noda. Is that not worth giving up a blocker?
Yeah, maybe it is
Maybe.
because like he has to block with the Innkeeper there. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Although,
either
I
way,
mean,
it's fine. Yeah,
losing the Innkeeper, I mean, if the 6/6s, flip over and start coming in, then
yeah, they
I
don't
don't
gain
know.
a
That's a
whole
lot of
bunch of
damage to
life.
absorb.
Yeah,
That's a
because
tough
like if they
call.
flip 2/6/6s, that's 6 creatures. You'd gain 6 life. I think you might still be dead to any spell, which I think he had in his hand
Hmm.
with the dragons. But anyway, it looks like we're gonna move over to modern,
Okay.
and yeah, a really cool match between Marty and Skyler. And Skyler playing a deck that she deemed broken on Twitter today. That is Elementals. This is a deck that's done pretty well in this circuit, right?
Yeah. No, they've had some experience with the deck certainly. And Marty Silverberg here with Murktide. And we've seen this before. Although we saw it with the Murktide defeating Ivan Espinosa this morning, I think. Not
Yes.
maybe the same 4-color deck, but the 4-color deck in practice. I mean, they share a lot of cards, even if they're not
Mm.
exactly themed to the same.
Yeah, this one's got a little more of a creature centric elemental theme. And then, yeah, I mean, you're looking at about 60 to 75% of the same-ish deck, like you said. So,
Yeah.
ton of stuff together. But Marty's doing the thing that we talked about earlier that's important, where he's got a threat in play. He's going to manage the board as much as he can, while also possibly leaving up mana for things like the counter spells in his hand. But this Express Generation whiffed on finding a mana source here, and I think that's a big deal.
Hmm.
Unless I'll say, is that a fetch land? That's what I'm saying. I think I missed one of the cards possibly. But no, it doesn't look like it. It looks
No,
like
I
it's just
think
going to
you're
be another
right.
Dragon Rage Channeler.
So adding to the board is great and everything, but also having a counterspell go unused for a turn, actually multiple counterspells in hand for Marty, and Skyler's deck is, I mean, going to present a lot of powerful threats here. Murktide is obviously impressive out of Marty's deck, but the average card in Skyler's deck is probably going to be stronger. And he received 4 mana here. If this is something like an Omnath, this is going to catch them up real quick.
Yeah. So not only is this going to draw a card here, they have a fetch land to go behind this as well to do all the things that are really good with Omnath. So, like you said, not only catch up, I mean, maybe even pull ahead this turn. Going to gain 4 life back, possibly put some more mana into play and keep going. These are the turns out of the 4 color decks that are really, really scary, or these turns where they get to kind of do the Omnath thing and go nuts.
Right. I mean, hardcast Incarnation here, either one. I'm sorry, the Fury or Solitude. I guess Endurance would be good too. Any of the three would be hard for Marty to deal with going forward. And it's not like Omnath's all that easy to kill either.
Yeah, like, you know, there's lightning bolts. There's not a ton of 1-mana answers for Omnath in the Murktide deck, especially, you know, game 1. And you're seeing a handful of counter spells here that aren't going to do a whole lot versus this card. So like you're in a squeeze here where Omnath is going to probably be alive for a very, very long time. All right, so it looks like with all the extra mana, I think they might be casting a Eldamari's Call.
Okay.
So they use the green and the white. They'd still have another green left over because I believe that's a snow-covered forest.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, the pixelated lands, I don't know what they're called. Those are sweet. Those are some really sweet basics.
Right, so available mana here, it looks like it's going to be red, blue, green.
Yeah, so maybe you could find one of the elementals. A Risen Reef would be really good. Yeah, get you some value. Keep going deeper into the deck.
Could also be a just something for later in the game.
Yeah, as I say, you could just, if you have something in your hand that you want to play, because I think there's a Quaddle in the hand, so it does look like there's an Endurance. Actually, I really like Endurance here. So you can play the Endurance off the, like, do they have double green?
No.
Oh, you can't. Okay, I guess if they have the green card in their hand, they can Endurance here if they want to. And this is preemptively kind of slowing down or stopping Murktide. So yeah, so use the Quaddle here to play the Endurance after adding the Yorion to hand. Great turn for Skyler here.
Yeah. Yeah, really sets Marty's resources back, graveyard
Love
back.
that play from Skyler.
Yeah, and the Yorion's in hand now, ready to deploy next turn. That's
to garner some of this card advantage back that you just lost, right? You know, you've got this Oath in play. You've hopefully got this Omnath in play. And yeah, Marty,
if these Dragon Rage Channelers had flying right now, with Marty having a hand full of counterspells, Skyler's unlikely to resolve the next several threats that get presented. Maybe the Dragon Rage Channelers could actually hold their own against the Omnath. I mean, it's tough, but it's possible. But without Delirium, there's no way.
We might have spoke too soon. I think they're going to actually be able to get Delirium here. So there's going to be a sorcery, a creature, and a land in, and then they got a Mishra's Bauble. So this deck is really good at getting Delirium, but this is impressive. One expressive iteration is going to find Delirium. And then they're going to have the second. They're going to be able to find Delirium here and hold up Counterspell the turn. These are two huge back-to-back turns from these players.
Right. So given that Murktide is able to reestablish Delirium already, was it a bit preemptive to ditch the Endurance, or do you think that was worthwhile and just?
I think it was very much worthwhile. Like with the size of the graveyard, a very likely play the next turn would be something like fetch up another land, possibly do something like Bauble or whatever. Be able to Murktide plus have something like Counterspell up, and that's a worst case scenario. Like you do not want to get into a situation like that. Plus, Skyler is set up to have a pretty big turn next turn as well. So you just want to slow your opponent down as much as possible. It's like we talked about this. The Izzet deck wants to go fast. The 4-color decks in this matchup, they want to go slow, right? They want to play a longer game because, you know, you mentioned it. Their individual cards inherently are more powerful most of the time, or they need to accrue a bunch of things, right? Like you need a Quaddle in play along with all these other things when you cast your Yorion to recoup all that value. So you want the game to go a little slower if you're on Skyler's side.
All right, so 6 damage coming across from the Dragon Rage Channelers, and here's a Murktide as well. So
they found another one. Wow.
Yeah, this was just an impressive turn from Marty. However,
there goes Delirium, but he has the hardest one.
Yeah,
there.
All the counter spells in hand are now down, and we know Skyler has at least Yorion. So certainly there could be a good turn coming back from Warfield side here as well, as we see
that top deck.
The 8-cast, one of the 8-cast decks won game 1. Rajarshi, Kolaventy over Shea Strausman, so getting an early lead.
Yeah, or Rishi as I call him. Very good player I think he's from the Florida area, if I remember correctly. So I don't know if he's moved or just decided to, you know, come up here for this event, but good on him for putting up the results as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's a I mean, to notify to all Florida players. Yeah. I mean, why aren't you here also?
Yeah, no, right.
I mean, if your reason is because the event was basically capped, okay, that's fine. If you've any other reason, that's not acceptable.
Sure.
All right. 4 life to the good for Skyler, going back up
It's
to
really hot in Florida right now too. It's definitely probably a lot more palatable where y'all are.
yeah.
I don't know what the weather is like there right now, but all
I'm
right. So
not
the
there either. I don't know.
yeah.
Alright,
So
so yeah.
extra mana from Omnath is going to lead to a Yorion here, and then one of these Dragon Rage challengers are going to meet a Prismatic End, and then end of turn, both of these cards are going to come back into play. She's going to draw. They're going to draw a card off Omnath, but it looks like yep, card off the Omnath. Now we're going to go ahead and get the card off of the Oath, a card that was banned in Pioneer for a while.
Yeah, that's right.
Ooh,
Wow.
good hit
That
here too.
yeah, Solitude is great. I don't know that there's a white card in hand, so they might have to wait a turn, but,
Yikes.
uh, Skylar's not in danger of dying anytime soon. If
Yeah, the problem is this Murktide is
yeah.
gonna reign supreme on this board because there's so many counter spells here, and Marty knows that there's a solitude there, so I expect mana to be held up for the rest of the game
Mhm.
for that kind of play. So we'll see because that's gonna be the important part of this game is this Murktide gonna get checked or not?
Yeah, 4 counters in hand. That that probably covers the rest of the game if Marty can find a consistent source of damage, but an attack here is a little bit
Yeah, it's a little scary.
yeah, a little bit.
There's a ton of damage on the way back. So what you might see is you might see Marty slow this down just for a second. Okay, we spoke wrong yet again. Here we go. He's gonna go ahead and just plow right on through. It looks like we're gonna have an expressive iteration. Trigger the shredder.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought he might do this over the span of 2 turns.
Right, yeah, I gotta say, I'm a little surprised by this. So Marty is playing more aggressively than I would have expected.
He's the one in the top 8, so
Yeah, I mean, that's very true. Certainly once the 5th land is found, then 2 counters could be deployed, in multiple turns leading up, but until then, there's some vulnerability here.
looks like he's gonna go ahead and get rid of the counterspell, leaving 3 charms in his hand here. And he did find the 5th land. Let's see what happens with the expressive iteration now. I forgot there's so much more to this spell.
Yeah.
It just resolved all the other little small things. And expressive iteration is a hell of a card, Joe.
It's pretty good. All these cards are pretty good. Which just I mean, if everything's great, then comparatively nothing is, and so
True.
I guess it still stands out. It's still the strongest card in the deck that everyone talks about as being the most important thing. So, an untapped land would allow the Dragon Rage Challenger to threaten an attack at least into the Orion, but without one, hard to bluff anything there. And Skyler, this is the turn. Big thing. I mean, we keep saying this. Big things keep happening on both sides, but this needs to be a significant turn as Marty's counter magic will eventually get turned on.
Yeah, they have a lot to do this turn, right? They have a fetch land. It's going to gain them some of this life back. So they're back up to 21. They're over their starting life. They're going to go down to 20 when they fetch. And they can do a ton of stuff here. They have the Solitude plus a Rain and 6. They have practically infinite mana at this point as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Solitude presumably take down Murktide, freeing up Yorion to attack if it wants to.
Yeah, I would just have been very surprised if I was in Warfield's seat and saw the counterspell get, pitched there
Yeah.
that turn.
All right. Solitude, Murktide. That's out of here. Or Marty will gain 6 life, but a good chunk of that will just go right away and get swallowed up by the Yorion. Although maybe it stays back to defend Ren and 6.
So there we go. We got a trigger on a shredder
That's
here
big.
from Skyler's second spell. Yeah, this is
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
Yeah, getting that 6th land is important for Marty.
Well, here this is important too. I think he only has 3 card types in his yard. So what he can do here is if he pitches a 4th card type, which would be like land, if he wanted to. Let's say he could make the channeler still just a 1/1, right?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, this kills the channeler. He could have possibly, as I say, I think his graveyard. I think he could have pitched a land there to make his DRC a 4/4. I'm sorry, a 3/3.
Right. And I was thinking actually the iteration maybe should be pitched because that turns on double Archmage Charm for the next turn.
Yeah, and that's why he wanted to keep the land, right? It's like he has double
Yeah.
Archmage Charm. But here's the thing, yeah, like you can draw a bunch of extra cards here, but you're losing very badly on the board now.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to help a little bit. You picked up an Unholy Heat.
So if you're going to, if you're going to let the Dragon Rage Channeler die, or if you're not going to hold up double charm next turn, then I think, yeah, I think you're right. I think you could have pitched the land there and kept the iteration and saved the channeler.
Yeah, let's see how he's going to do. He's going to start off with the iteration here. Looks like I found another Murktide.
It's a good place to be. Although that will, again, take down the counter magic. Skyler maybe only has one card left at this point, so maybe that's okay. This is tricky. I know we have other 2 matches to play, but I think I would vote. I think I'm going to say we're going to stay here and watch
We
this
might
game play
have
out.
to. It
Yeah.
looks like the legacy match has already had 3 games complete.
Oh, you're right.
If that seems right, let's say I know this game has been long, but wow. So it does look like the legacy match is correct. So Skyler's teammate Shea Strausman is up 1 match for his team, but in the Pioneer seat they are still down 1. So this is a very important match for their team. Looks like Unholy Heat's going to kill the Omnath or target the Omnath. It looks like this Murktide is going to come in behind here, another giant Murktide. So back to being the biggest creature on board. It looks like now that an Unholy Heat and a couple of Charms are going to be left over behind this as well. So that'll be a pretty good spot as well. So if Marty can fade another big turn from Skyler here, they might have found themselves another spot here. I mean, drawing a bunch of cards is still really, really powerful. So let's see exactly how many cards they want to delve out here, or exactly which cards they want to delve out here. This is one of the harder parts of the deck, actually, is like delving when your graveyard is like not completely full. And, you know, hey, do I want to leave Delirium for stuff? You know, he does have another Unholy Heat in his hand. So he has a lot of reasons to make sure this stays this way. So what he left was Artifact, Instant, and Sorcery in his yard. So if you find something like a fetch land that he can get that done, or if he draws a land into his hand, he can ever trigger his Shredder, then he can get Delirium pretty easily that way. Looks like we're going to have a main phase Quaddle from Skyler here.
Nice. So chat is talking about Cavern of Souls, which I don't see a Cavern of Souls, but if
I
there's
do
artwork,
actually.
okay.
I do actually. There are Cavern of Souls. There is a Cavern of Souls in play.
If there's artwork for Cavern that I don't recognize, then that would explain
a lot of these plays.
Yeah, it would explain Marty not wanting to leave up counter magic if there's a Cavern in there, even though I still don't see it. I don't know which land it is.
Right above the Hollowed Fountain, below
Yeah, okay. I
the
figured that's the only one I don't recognize. So if there
Yep.
was one, it had to be that one. Anyway,
Now
so
I
that
feel bad.
does
Marty, I'm sorry. Didn't realize there was a Cavern of Souls in play.
make more sense now.
Chat, you're always right.
No, Chad is not right because they're just you know making assumptions based on like we shouldn't even have alternate arts. This should never even come up in the first place.
They should all be white bordered and revised looking.
They should just have the card name printed on them in size 40 font and get rid of the artwork entirely. That would be fine.
Was this an old man with bad eyesight joke? Is that what I just heard?
So with the Cavern and nothing to steal, do these charms start drawing cards at some point?
Yeah, I think maybe even do it here in the main phase, right? Like there's a couple of reasons to do it. You could trigger your Shredder, obviously, to get a little bit bigger and possibly start to, get some attacks in. But also, you may even want Delirium here to take care of one of these flyers. The problem is there's the Orion and there's a Quaddle, so you actually want to kill the Quaddle. So you don't even really need Delirium for that here, but it does look like he's just going to slow play this just a little bit. And I don't mind this either. Your hand is chock full of things to do, so you don't need to like actually push super hard here. Like you can leave up Counterspell for most things. You know, we don't know what Cavern of Souls is naming. I'm assuming it's naming, elemental.
Yeah, it has to
And then
be.
so most of the creatures are gonna be,
Mhm.
uh, playable, and you're not gonna have anything for that anyway, but you do have a removal spell in your hand, so if Skyler has a weaker turn here, you can kinda start to pounce at the end of her. Well, speaking of good elementals, this turn will not be weak.
Nope. Yeah, Omnath is the full package. I mean, it does everything. Gains life, draws cards, makes mana, is a sizable body. What else do you need? There is. Let's see. We're not on Delirium right now. I don't believe. Is that the whole graveyard bobble
I think
iteration of
so.
Unholy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He can put a land into his graveyard right now, though. I think
Yeah.
that's what he's thinking about doing.
Sure. Sacrificing the islet in
Mhm.
response to the trigger. With no fetch land in play, that would leave Skyler unable to fully benefit from the Omnath, although it is still card advantage.
Yeah, what he's thinking about doing here with the card draw on the stack, he's thinking about using Unholy Heat so that Skylar can't do anything like play a fetch land after this and get all the other triggers. Yeah. Okay, sorry. All right. So what I think he's okay. I like this. So he's going to respond to his own Unholy Heat. So Unholy Heat is targeting Omnath. This is going to check on resolution whether you have Delirium or not. So what he's going to do is he's going to use the DRC trigger, see if he gets Delirium that way. He doesn't. So what he's going to do now is sacrifice
Mhm.
the land. The land's going to go here. He's going to draw the card. And then Unholy Heat is going to resolve. And on resolution, it's going to see that it has Delirium. Speaking of Unholy Heat, that's another one getting added to Marty's hand as well. Very tight play for Marty here.
Yeah, that was nice. And this stalemate continues. This is, a lot of powerful cards being cast on both sides, but no one can even squeeze in an attack.
Mhm. Now, this Unholy Heat that's in Marty's hand might be able to help break up some of the stuff just a little bit
Mhm.
here. I will say, if he plays this is his second spell in the turn, right? So he could have maybe triggered his Shredder here, but and get a counter on it possibly to where he gets big enough to where it might be able to start attacking through this Yorion, because you're going to probably have to use the Unholy Heat on the Quaddle to be able to start attacking, because it does have Death Touch, so you don't want to trade one of your cards for that.
Hmm.
This might be one of
Okay.
those matches where the entire match is done before game one if one of them is
Yeah,
done.
I mean, seriously, could be.
It looks like Yorion is going to be the target of Unholy Heat here.
Okay. That's reasonable. It is the biggest flyer on the board. And this is not an Eternal Witness build, so it's not going to come back. There's no danger of that.
Yeah, and you can still attack with just like your smaller creatures here too. If you
Mhm.
don't want to trade your Murktide here, you can attack with DRC plus Shredder, or even just DRC if you want, and just offer the trade. And this looks okay. It does look like everything's going to get into the red zone here.
Yeah,
But
everything
still a
comes
ton
in.
of damage too. If you trade with the so if you make this trade, I think that's still just completely fine in a lot of ways too.
Yeah, I mean, is it? I mean, because this is going to leave basically trading even with the Solitude on the swing back if there's no.
Yeah, I mean, I would have probably played this one a little different. Maybe left up Murktide to keep Solitude from attacking back. I mean, you are attacking for 6 and, they're attacking
Mhm.
for 3, gaining 3, but, yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to know the composition completely of Marty's deck.
Right. Okay. So Solitude and well, certainly drawing up one of the channel lands might alter how this game plays out as well. If Skylar can turn one of those up, although I think there's a Boseiju in play already.
And this will be the deciding match. It looks like Vincent Daniels, like I said, that deck can give Winota fits, and it looks like it did. That is a clean 2-0 sweep from Vincent Daniels. So we're still in game 1 here. That's correct. But we're going to get the full match of this one, it looks like. So all the pressure is on these two players. Joe, when you're in these spots, would you rather have had your match finished, or would you rather be the one still playing?
Oh, it's not a matter of what I want. If I'm playing, dividing top, I'm always the one still playing.
Yeah, true. For me, I wanted to be the one playing most of the time. I can't watch in this
Hmm.
spot. Oh, that's a huge draw there. Uh, nice little lightning bolt. Got to be able to finish up this solitude.
Yeah. Now this one seems like it's
Yeah, it's going
tilting
to
in
trigger the
Marty's
shredder.
favor.
Yeah. And another, I think it's another lightning bolt on top. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that one's just good enough to keep. Yeah, and he's done pitching spells here at this point. And yeah, it looks like Skyler doesn't have much here. It looks like she's drawn a lot of lands and kind of flooded out here. So this game's looking pretty good for Marty. We'll have to see. The 4-color decks can still do some crazy stuff, but
Yeah, and they maybe drew a lot of lands, but they also have Ren and 6, so they're not going to miss a land drop. And
right,
Marty is filtering lands.
right.
So he has 5 in play, but he's used a Fiery Islet and also thrown away several to Shredders and Dragon Rage Chandlers.
Well, look like Marty's going to play the second DRC here, trigger both of these Shredders. Help push a ton of extra damage here.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like one of them's going to get pitched, so this one's going to grow up a little bit.
I think we can all agree Spell Pierce is not needed.
Yep, another land not needed. Doesn't mean he's not going to be able to hold up Charm, but I don't think he cares that much at this point.
Yeah, this is what coming across here for 6. Ignores Ren and 6.
Yeah, I like just pushing damage here.
Yeah.
You're setting up to lethal next turn. And it looks like game one's going to go to Marty, and that is a huge win for his team, because his team is even with the other one, so now they're up a game, so they only have to win one more game, while Skyler has to win 2. So huge win for the Izzet Murktide deck, which I've been very impressed with today. They've been going toe to toe
the
with
Murktide
these
decks,
4-color decks.
Yeah, I
Ledger
feel
Shredder
like
seems legit.
I feel like in previous events, the elemental, or I mean, the 4-color decks were handling the Murktide decks,
Same.
and maybe that has swapped. I mean, you're right. The Shredders do give the Murktide decks more power, just access to more cards in the late game. So here's a question that doesn't really have maybe a specific answer, but we can certainly get your opinion on it. For a long time, scrying 2 was considered to be, I think, like if a card was draw 1, if something said draw a card or scry 2 is considered a little bit weaker than draw 1. Okay, how do we classify connive?
Oh,
or like
God.
it's basically looting, except there's a
Yeah.
bonus element to it, because obviously filtering lands out there mattered. I mean,
in this deck specifically, in the Izzet deck,
uh-huh.
it's almost better than just drawing a card, right? Because like it's getting you a card deeper, so you have some card selection, but it's also filtering your deck. It's fueling Delirium, and then it's growing some of your creatures as well. And then in the decks that we've seen Shredder in, I feel like it's actually just better, right? Because like, you see it, is it Phoenix, or it's on par, because you're seeing where you're like pitching, Phoenixes, or you're hitting Delirium and stuff like that. So in those spots, yeah, I would rather be able to get a card in my yard in a lot of these spots, and have the selection, than just having the extra card in my hand. So I think it's a little more situation dependent, but it's a lot closer than I would think in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not I'm not going to compare it to drawing a card, but I do think
I think it's better than
based on what we've
Scry,
seen
for
so
sure.
far, I would say that conniving is better than scrying 2.
Yeah,
I think by a pretty fair margin.
I mean, you're trying to kill your opponent nowadays, like a lot better. Like, Magic in early 2000s, Scry 2 was busted because all of our cards sucked and the games went longer. You had like 3 good cards in your whole deck. Nowadays, your deck's worth $2,000 and all your cards are busted. You've got Ragavan, you've got, DRC, you've got these Murktides. So like conniving is busted in these decks.
Yeah.
And then you've got these super impactful cards, right? Like you're trying to find sideboard cards, stuff like that. Like, but you're also still growing all your stuff while you're doing. I don't know. It just seems really good to me.
No, it does seem strong. It seems useful. And the ability to just filter lands out is something that like modern, I mean, it's more like a brainstorm. It's like, okay, I have these bad cards. I don't want anymore, except it's even better than that, because you don't have to redraw them later. They're just out of here.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, it does, like putting stuff in the graveyard is valuable for a number of different cards. So yeah, Ledger Shredder. Put up
it's one of those cards that there's a lot of hype. Yeah, it's a lot of hype, right? But it's living up to the hype. Because like that's the thing. There was a ton of hype, and then I went and looked at like results and a lot of stuff, and I didn't see a lot of Shredder decks, right? I didn't see, I didn't see it doing super well in standard. Didn't see it doing super well in modern and pioneer. I saw like a little here or there. And now when I'm watching it get played out in these decks, I'm like, this card's legit. Like this card is actually really good.
It's very good, and the ability to block like an aggressive, 2-power 1-drop. I mean, that's super nice. So Ledger Shredder card from Streets of New Capenna, just to update where we're at, because we talked about this at the beginning of the day. The list of Streets of New Capenna cards that we saw today in play, while players are getting ready for game 2, we have Ledger Shredder, Zayator's Proving Ground.
But the Jund one? Which
It
one's
is
that
the
one?
Jund one.
Okay.
Yeah. Riveter's Charm, also the
Okay.
Jund one.
Yeah.
Unlicensed Hearse
Yeah.
and Strangle.
Okay.
So we had 5. Drake predicted 6 for the weekend. He
I
may get
think he
there.
I think he actually got there because I don't remember the name of it, but we saw a different Triome. I'm pretty positive than the Jund one. I
Oh,
think one of the
that's
4-color decks had
that's
another Triome in it.
that's possible.
I think it might have had the Bant Triome. I'm pretty
Yeah.
positive we've seen that in play.
Okay.
So
Well, then I'll have to look up the name of the Bant Triome, and then we'll give him
we'll
credit
go to the
for it.
tape. We'll go to the tape. We'll call the judges in. We'll get an official ruling. But
No, we
I'm going
don't.
to give it to Drake.
We don't need official ruling. We'll give it to him. If the
All
Bant
right.
Triome was there, it was there.
Yeah.
It's easy to miss since I don't know the artwork or the name of the card in that case.
Sure.
Um,
I could look it up, I guess.
but yeah. So Drake picked 6. I thought that was optimistic, but he got it.
All right, I'm looking up the name of this one because I'm curious myself as well. But yeah, that is I mean, he nailed it, right? That's actually
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we'll have to get more then. We'll have to scout tomorrow to get more, just so he's not exactly correct. We can't have that.
I'm sure someone in chat's already said it, but it's Spara's headquarters. I'm pretty sure we saw Spara's headquarters in play
Okay.
today.
All right. We'll put it on the list,
All right.
and then we'll get these players.
Yeah, so they're gonna
Assume-
be doing a little sideboarding right now.
Yeah.
Skyler's gonna be on the play for game 2. And
I guess.
go
Sorry.
ahead.
So I was saying sideboarding probably takes longer in a team event too when you're the only game still playing,
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, I'm the one playing this deck. I'm the one that knows this deck, and there are 2 players like, oh, what about
Well,
this?
but
Did you think
this
about
and
this?
this and this, yeah.
Did you know? Wait, because lightning bolt can kill the 3 toughest creatures. That's
Yeah.
important, right? Like, yeah, I know.
It's also an 80 card deck too, don't forget.
Yeah.
With some 1-ofs and 2-ofs. So like
Yeah.
there I've seen Yorion players sideboard before, and look here, I got a deck in my hand, and they're like they're going as fast as
Yeah.
they possibly can through everything, trying to and then you see them do this. They go through the whole deck, and they get to the end, and they're like, they have to start over because they're like,
Yeah.
"Where's my one of thing that
Mhm.
looks like 17 other cards in my deck?" It's like, wait, because me, I look for like shades of color, like and
Mhm.
stuff. So I'm like looking for the picture, and it's like if it looks like something else, I might get it wrong or whatever. So it looks like we're gonna go into game
Oh,
2 here. It looks like we
what
missed a little
the?
bit of
What
the
happened?
yeah, it's all good, all good. And it looks like, is this a chalice on 1? I believe this is a chalice on 1. Yeah, there we go. There's the counter.
Okay.
This is a very impactful card in this matchup because we saw in the last game so many cards like Consider and Unholy Heat and Dragon Rage Chandler getting played.
Mhm.
We didn't see Ragavan, but I'm assuming it's possibly in there, though I do think sometimes they get boarded out in this matchup because of the fact that the ground's going to get gummed up so much and they just can't win.
Mhm.
They can't attack. So it's going to be pretty good and impactful versus all those cards, but it does look like I think Marty doesn't have any more 1-drops left over. Though we do see one of those Jace the Mind Sculptor, a card that's just always jammed in the blue card sideboards. I feel like if you're playing a blue deck in Modern right now, you just have a Jace in your sideboard.
And I
But
think it's a good idea. I mean,
yeah,
yeah, I don't think it's a mistake. It seems like a lot of these a lot of the opponents, whatever you're playing, the opposition is not set up to, like, you're playing against Izzet Murktide. You're not planning on dealing with planeswalkers. And Jace is pretty good.
and you saw how long that game went, right? In game
Yes.
1, like we were done with the other 2 matches. We were done with 3 games in one of them, 2 games in the other one before they finished game 1. So these games go long.
Mhm.
And it's just another piece. We keep talking about how, I felt like Izzet was behind the 4-color decks, and I kept watching it just get beat up on camera over and over again. And then more and more when I watch it now with Shredder and some of these additions, it seems like
Mhm.
it can go toe to toe at times with these decks.
Yeah. So we'll see. Dress down in hand, but yeah, Chalice on 1 is certainly going to be an issue. Is Jace able to overcome the hurting that Chalice of the Void is putting on Marty's deck? Dress down and also in hand, which is basically almost a free 2-for-1 at some point in the game. It's not going to affect the board most of the time, but Skyler is bound to play something that either draws a card or has an effect in
Kills one
impact.
of Marty's cards, something along those lines. Like,
Yeah, and Dress down will just
Yeah.
cantrip itself and then swallow up that effect, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Dress down a card that a lot of us overlooked in MH2.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
it's
I
magic.
don't blame anyone for
Massive.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a very well designed card, I think. Very cool, and yeah, tricky to play against.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, we need to see some dress downs beating Thassa's Oracles, Because Thassa's Oracle with Cavern
Ooh.
is a little too easy. Dress down will solve that problem.
I haven't seen that yet, but I want to now.
All right, so cycle Triome and step for Warfield, and then pick up Yorion. Pretty solid turn, just developing for the longer game, and there's no reason that they need to play for the short game right now because Marty is completely trumped by the Chalice of the Void.
Yeah, another card, a couple cards out of the hand. Like I see an Unholy Heat. I think I see a Lightning Bolt as well. But is it time for Jace?
I think it is. I mean, Chalice on 1 is covering, unless there's a mystical dispute, which would be really good right now.
I wonder if Marty's going to leave this at 3. So this does expose it to possible lightning bolts from Skyler.
Yeah,
and also, Brainstorm isn't even... I don't even know if I would Brainstorm here. I think I might have +2'd.
So I am a huge fan of not brainstorming with Jace. In this case, the lightning bolt argument is invalid because of the Chalice. However,
Chalice, right,
Fury.
Yeah.
But you're still right, because plussing Jace could get around having Fury take it down for 4. So yes, I agree with you. I think scrying there would have been pretty safe play.
Because there is a red card in Skylar's hand, but I do actually think it might be Lightning Bolt.
Yeah.
It looks like it's a really old card, so I think it's just an old copy of Lightning Bolt, but I could just be wrong here. Thanks for catching that, Joe.
Yeah. No, don't worry about it. I'm over it. We're a team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also what we've seen, especially with Ledger Shredder, like these blue-red decks are great at drawing cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't need Jace to do draw cards. We need Jace to, be a win condition or defend us. And so that's the Cavern, right?
Yeah, that is Cavern of Souls. That is the special one.
Yeah. Irrelevant in this case is that's actually a Teferi coming down.
Yeah, so nothing's getting counterspelled anyway.
Yeah. And that's gonna... Yeah, so Marty's 1-drops and his counterspells are out of here.
So this is a pretty cool play.
This is so cool. This is really good awareness by Skyler.
Though Cavern doesn't produce colored mana outside of creatures, so if they have another land this turn, they can't bolt plus use, another land and take care of to put the Chalice back out.
No, Chalice doesn't care about Sunburst.
Oh, you're right.
Explosives does.
I'm thinking of explosives. Yeah.
Yeah.
And this was a lightning bolt. Nice lightning bolt. Wow.
That was a very astute play by Skyler Warfield.
Yeah, very great play.
Marty Silverberg, punished a little bit by maybe even more than a little bit by not plussing the Jace there.
It all comes back to that play of do we plus the Jace or do we zero it there? And like it's hard to... I mean, I'm sure if Shaheen Sharani was listening to us, and he'd just be like, "Yeah, of course you brainstorm because it's the only text that's on the card."
No.
But yeah, I'm leaning towards it being a +2 there. But it looks like we got a bevy of options for Marty here. Now he does have a Murktide here, but not a ton of cards in his graveyard shed. It looks like his teammate really wanted him to lead off Expressive Iteration for this turn.
Yeah. So with the Chalice not redeployed yet, but Marty knowing it's in hand,
right?
Yeah, I think you are incentivized to pick off the Teferi now because you may not be able to in the future.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And there seems to be a plethora of removal spells in Marty's hand at the moment.
Yeah, and if he's got a land, he's got a pretty clean turn here where he can go, Shredder into Lightning Bolt, because I don't think he has another threat in his hand, and that's more what he's looking like besides the Murktide that is not very castable this turn.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. I think there's 5 cards in the graveyard now. Yeah. There is a Bolt.
Yeah, I guess if he wanted to play Murktide right now, he could.
Oh, maybe he's going to do either one. Otawara to do it, though.
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's going to do either one. Yeah, he wants to keep that Otawara.
Okay, Skyler with several land in hand. We know there's a Chalice in there. I think you don't have to rush the Chalice back down, but I do think you probably want to get it back down sooner rather than later. And here's a run in 6.
Go ahead and return one of these fetch lands, probably from the
the Rogran Triome to be able to cycle with. But if there's Delirium here, then this run in 6 is vulnerable to being shot down.
It looks like the Chalice is about to get deployed again for 1. This will spring Marty's trap of the unholy heat here on the Ridden 6.
Yeah.
So maybe we could have started the turn off with the Chalice of the Void here to kind of possibly avoid that. But is there a
Yeah.
delirium there?
Man,
Does
it
look like
appears
there
that there
is.
is. So yeah, that's so as good as the play was last turn. This one maybe could have gone a little differently. Chalice one does make it back into play though, and that's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, it still shuts off what? 4 more cards, I think. 3 more cards from Marty's hand. Now here come the threats though. So this is gonna get a good start. Looks like we're gonna have Ledger Shredder. And it's gonna be followed up by a Murktide, it looks like. No more Delirium, but it's not really relevant anymore.
Yeah, but with Shredder in play, I mean, these we've seen it's not hard to get back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean these decks are like just so good at getting Delirium over and over again. Shredder just being another good threat, but another way to load up your graveyard. You know, you and I talked about this during that little break that we had.
Yeah.
I'm just more and more impressed with this card the more I see it.
So that okay, so this is a missed sequence. This is done out of order, and
Yeah.
so this Ledger Shredder trigger would have to resolve before the Murktide Regent receives that die. But looks like an incident is not going to be made of it. And we'll just continue on. That is a missable trigger. If I'll admit, if it was me, if I was in Skyler's seat, I would have called a judge and said my opponent missed the trigger here.
So I saw I was going to fetch thin their deck up just a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully get some of those good cards to the top for Skyler's sake. What is Skyler looking for to get themselves out of this?
Well, I mean, with the cavern on the board, any elemental would be great.
I think it's a Solitude in their hand.
Solitude works. Omnath is great. Fury takes down the Ledger Shredder at least.
We haven't seen that many Furies today. I'm surprised at how little we've seen of them. So it looks like it's going to be a pass. Marty's going to start off with another Ledger Shredder here this turn. So his next spell will trigger 2 different Shredders.
Yeah. Now, the potential is there to just burn a spell into the chalice, I suppose.
Yeah, I was wondering earlier if there was ever going to just be a burned bolt here,
Mm-hmm.
just cast, and I think there might be in this game. We'll see if the situation comes up.
Here's a Solitude, and here is the dress down. Oh no, this is huge.
And yeah, we saw Skyler, not do it on her own main phase, and here this is going to allow the chance of something like dress down to happen.
Yeah, so this is going to trigger the 2 Shredders, which is significant in several ways. Obviously, the biggest one is Murktide doesn't die, but
It's
then also this Shredder will become a 2/4.
Yeah, that's
I'm
the
sorry,
important
it'll
part.
become a 2/4, right?
Well, yeah, because the dress down technically hasn't resolved yet, right? Like we've played dress down, we're triggering,
and this is why. So this is how the distinction is different as far as actually doing things correctly.
right? Yeah.
Things have to happen in the correct order. These triggers have to happen before the dress down reaches play, otherwise they wouldn't actually happen.
Yeah, they wouldn't have an ability. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is important, even though things are overlooked sometimes. It is important to try and do things correctly whenever possible. So we have here an attack coming in for 9, I think. They both lose flying, but they are still large.
Yeah, so you're not going to see a chump block from Skyler
Right.
here. Meaning they'll turn around and attack with this with lifelink if they want to on their turn. Back over Skyler needs to have a big turn here.
Yeah. And Marty may be close to out of things that don't get blown up by Chalice. Skyler does actually have another Chalice in hand. I think that's not going to do any good. Yorion is still there. Okay, Yorion on Solitude is
pretty good.
That's big time. So That would turn things right around. Now,
Yeah, you get an abundant growth in play as well. You draw an extra card here.
yeah, if it resolves, and I don't believe there is a counter in Marty's last game. He had nothing but counters. This time, I don't think he has one.
Yep, looks like we're going to play the Orion.
And this is going to resolve. And this game, which looked like Marty might be able to end and take down the match for his team, is now
A little
I would
more
say
up in the
back.
air.
Yeah. Abundant growth comes in. We'll target the fetch land to save a life over the long run.
Right. It'll allow Skyler to be able to tap this for mana without having to actually go fetch a land out.
Mm-hmm.
Was that an Eldamari's call as well
It
picked
was
up?
Eldamri's call. Yeah. Murktide goes down. Marty will gain, I forget now, 6 or 7 life. Okay, up to 18. But yeah, the board is stabilized.
Yeah, it looks like Marty's going to go digging just a little bit here. He's going to use his Fire Islet to draw another card. He's still got Expressive Iteration in his hand. I think he just drew an Aether Gust, I think is what I just saw.
Well, that's not going to do much right now.
It does get around Cavern with Omnath later, though, possibly.
Yeah, certainly.
So that could come up for sure. Does look like we're going to start off with the Expressive Iteration. Another Murktide at the ready here.
Well, only one card even desirable there.
Yeah, well, the other two just get counterspelled. So
yeah, I mean, there is a Murktide in hand, so I guess casting into the Chalice puts cards in the graveyard.
Yeah, so the Charm's going to go to hand. They're going to put the Consider exiled. So you might see the Consider just thrown to the Wolves or whatever here.
Yeah.
It's going to trigger the Shredders as well as fuel the Murktide. Yep, Chalice trigger. What was the second spell, right? So those two, okay, There we go. Let's see which one they want to do first. There we go. Yeah. I think Ragavan's a pretty easy pitch here.
Yeah, I think so. That's not going to do too much with the Chalice out there. I mean, there is the Otawara, so the Chalice could be removed at some point, but
Mystical
might
Dispute.
be saved for something more significant. And that's a Mystical Dispute.
Yeah, I think that one's you can get rid of that one as well. So these Shredders are getting pretty big now. And let's see, does Marty want to add this Murktide to the board as well? This deck just doesn't quit.
No, it really doesn't. And that was either a stretch or a judge call.
I know I need a couple of stretches right now. Man, these games have been long and grindy today.
Yeah. This is a good game though. I'm enjoying this one.
Oh yeah. I've enjoyed almost every game we've had on camera today. They've all been great. Had some absurd top decks. All right, so it looks like we're gonna call here.
Yeah.
So does Marty want to use one of the counter spells here? I believe you want to use Charm here. I think you want to actually counterspell this. You don't want Skyler going into their turn and then go and get another Solitude.
Right. Yeah. If the Aether Gust is used, Skyler can just redraw the call, and then Marty doesn't have mana up anymore. So definitely that doesn't seem like the right choice. This is shields down. So let's see what comes up here.
A Prismatic Ending. All right, that's answer to one of the Shredders.
Okay.
All right, that's the start of something.
Yeah. Frustrating on Skyler's side that the Solitude can't even attack through the little Shredder right now.
Yeah. Can attack through either one of these. Like you said, the body on these very relevant. 1/3 into a 2/4 can actually matter quite a lot in combat in these matchups.
This may be the cycling of I believe the Rogan Triumph that got picked up like 4 or 5 turns ago, still in hand. So yep, there it goes.
Looks like a regular Cavern of Souls.
A few turns ago, with 2 other land untapped, Skyler played a shock land tapped, and I considered whether it should have been untapped just to be able to cycle then, but the life total now being at 7, I think turned out to
Mhm.
be a good decision to hold off on that.
Yeah, it looks like this is
To,
going to exile this shredder.
mhm.
So the larger shredder's down.
I mean, I'd love to see a game 3 here, but
Absolutely. Yeah.
I Marty's behind on the board, but I like he's got more cards and he's got this shredder that's just converting over and over again.
You still got another Murktide as well, another huge creature to have in play.
Mhm.
Looks like you picked up a bauble here. So this is the first spell of the turn. Still got an Otawara as well if he needs to push through the last couple points of damage one turn, maybe remove one of the blockers from
Yeah.
Skyler.
Yeah, certainly if there was two, I mean, there's only one aerial blocker for Skyler, so with a Murktide or just, you know, several more counters on the shredder, that could be enough.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that you're possibly going to see get set up this turn. Is big Murktide,
Mhm.
trigger the shredder, and then if Skylar's board pretty much stays the same, then Otawara should be able to bounce the Yorion and attack, allow the Flyers to attack for lethal here.
Mhm.
Looks like Marty's trying to make a 6/6 here. And
That's interesting. I mean, if it's not too taxing on the graveyard, I think you would shoot for 7 since that's Skylar's life total.
yeah, that's a good point. Looks like he's actually double checking that as well. Yeah, I was gonna say he agrees with you here. It looks like he's gonna go up to 7.
Okay, so this time, yeah, this is resolved correctly this time. The cost for Murktide is paid. The shredder connive happens, and then the Murktide comes into play. Perhaps irrelevant, but I'm happy to see it done.
Just as long as you're happy, Joe.
Yeah, I mean,
Just as long as you're happy.
that's my primary concern.
I would hope that's one of your primary concerns in life.
All right, we may have reached the end of the turn here, and
Skylar's gonna go ahead and fetch down to 6.
yeah, it's gonna fetch away that abundant growth land to thin the deck.
Okay, thin this out just a little bit.
Yeah, and you know, I'm on board with that. I know deck thinning gets plenty of hatred for like being very inconsequential and very, very minor, but it is not 0. And margins are getting small here. So I am on board with this, especially with the Murktide being an 8/8. That 1 point of life probably doesn't matter.
Agreed.
It
All right, well, there
also,
we go. Get the abundant growth back.
yeah, that's not good though.
Yeah, can't be played into the chalice.
Yeah. So it's Chalice, Abundant Growth, and I don't know what the other card is, but
I think it was another 1 drop, honestly. It might have
if it's a
been.
blank, then Marty wins if he goes for it here on bouncing the Yorion. However, he could also play it safe and just attack and force the Yorion to chump block. I don't
What would you
hate that either.
would you go for it since you're at such a high
I
life
would
total, or do you
not.
like just playing safe?
I would not go for it here because if I use my Otawara on the Yorion and then my opponent casts another Solitude, I just destroyed myself.
True.
So I would not do that.
Yeah, I think that's what they're debating right now.
Yeah.
It looks like he kind of agrees with you. I guess they could draw. I was gonna say no counterspell doesn't get them out of it here either because of the cavern.
Yeah, I think you do. I mean, I understand that there's some dead cards in hand. I would not rush it here. With Ether Gust in hand, you can beat something like Omnath on Cavern of Souls, and just I feel like the primary threat is just if you Gust, I mean, if you Otawara and Skylar has Solitude, Marty goes from being significantly far ahead to pretty far behind.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Look, if
Okay,
he
there's the
agrees with you
attack
as
and your
well.
end blocks. Yep,
Yep.
there's no choice there for Skyler.
Yeah, make the play you have to make to stay alive. Looks like here comes the top deck. Looks like another prismatic ending. Don't
Okay.
think that's going to be enough.
Well, prismatic ending on Shredder would allow Solitude to attack,
Oh, that's
and Skyler
true.
could go
Yeah.
to 9.
Okay, so a glimmer of hope.
Yep, still in it. None of
Is there
Marty's
anything you
cards.
can do here?
I
So
don't.
there's
I don't think Marty can
Otawara.
interact with
Yeah.
that aside from Otawara bounce the Chalice and then Bolt of Solitude. I guess.
I mean, that might actually happen here. I'll free up some of Skylar's hand as well.
It would.
This game is so close. That does look like the damage is going to get through, though. So Skylar's going to go up to 9. Oh, I spoke too soon. Maybe not. I guess, what do you think about, could they have possibly taken the damage and then end of turn bounce this? So the lightning bolts are freed up? Plus the
If
Ragavan?
if there's actual, yeah, I suppose that could have worked too. This way, yeah. So Unholy Heat can take down Solitude here. Oh no,
Yeah, I
wait.
think they're just
Oh,
going to,
you're right. That's what happened. Okay,
yeah, Marty's just going to, like, yeah, he's going to not move until he
okay,
has to. Yeah,
okay.
okay,
Because this prevents the abundant growth from being replayed. All right.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a really tight play, yeah. This allows you to kick the, dash the Ragavan as
Mhm.
well, if you
Yeah.
want.
And so now there's Dash Ragavan and there's Lightning Bolt. So there's redundancy here. Skyler should be at 9, I believe, but this is more than 9, and that is it.
Wow,
That
what a
was an excellent
match.
match. So Vincent Daniels, Marty Silverberg, and Rajarshi Kolaventy win their quarterfinal match.
Yeah, and
And
I think you need to point out how
okay,
good these Izzet decks have been doing on
yeah,
camera today. Ledger
no,
Shredder is worth the dollar amount. It's worth the hype that's been attached to it, and I loved what I saw for the Pioneer deck, and I've been loving what I've seen on its modern deck.
no,
I might
it's
have to
impressive.
re-sleeve this deck back up.
Yeah, no, it has looked good. It has allowed these decks to, I mean, they're just still running strong even in the late game. That was, the second and third Murktide, and just threats were killed and just more were coming, more were available. That was a good display, both by Marty and by Ledger Shredder and by his team advancing to the top 4. So we will see them tomorrow morning.